like within Jamdid, I think we were literally talking about like how flawed the media world is. I truly have hope that Jamdid will help to change the way things are built, or at least allow and open those rooms and opportunities for us. Um, yeah, I feel like there's never a drought of artists or creative of color to highlight, to collab with, you know, so I think faith is what helps me push against imposter syndrome. I'd be lying if I said, you know, imposter syndrome doesn't win sometimes, but I think a lot of it is just saying things with your chest, or just like reassuring yourself of who you're doing what you're doing it for. I've ironically, like at my very first panel discussion, and I'm like a really shy person, but I kind of braced myself, and you know, I was able to ask a well-established white person in the industry. I was able to like get up, introduce myself, ask a question. As soon as I mentioned that I was the creative director of my magazine, she kind of almost like barked at me.
Ew.
Yeah, right. And you know, she literally barked at me and was just saying that, like, you know, it takes years of experience to do this, do that, right? But you know, I feel like for me it was more embarrassing than anything. But you know, I feel like I needed that. I was like, okay, this was like my reminder of like who I do this for. Like,
correct.
It's cool. I don't just who's someone, especially a white person, to tell you that you're not the creative director of your life. Like, you can't tell me I'm wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So really, it's faith that there will be change for me, and also just faith in God. Yeah, and just reassuring myself of who I do this for, and that's all that matters. That's all the reassurance I need.
Imposter syndrome. Oh my goodness. In my life, I've worn many different hats, had many different careers. I'm one of those people who, once I decide, the universe conspires with me, and I quantum leap a lot. So I think my imposter syndrome, I mean, growing up, I grew up in Connecticut, and I grew up in the inner city in Connecticut. I have always been the person who was top of her class, captain of the team, she's a cheerleader, she runs all the clubs, like, she's doing the most because she's hyperactive. That's what I don't realize, like, she gotta do the most. And you want me to get out the hood, you gotta do more. So I can say, like, when I started to realize imposter syndrome started to become a thing in my life, first of all, discovering the word imposter syndrome really messed me up. I wish I never knew it existed. And I'm really working on deleting it. I never heard of it. Who are you? But growing up, I grew up in an inner city in Connecticut called Bridgeport, and it's predominantly Black and brown people. But my sports and all of my, like, schooling, I went to Catholic school in Bridgeport with all Black and brown people. And then my sports were outside. So I didn't really have imposter syndrome then. I would say when I went to college, I went to a PWI. If you guys are familiar with Quinnipiac University, I went there, I played a Division I sport, I walked on. My first major was mass communications. I wanted to have my own television show. My second major, then I had a 4.0, and I was like, I'm really gonna piss off this degree if I just keep getting straight A's. Like, I'm way too smart to be doing this, so I need to be challenged. And that's the theme of my life, is like, I need to be challenged. So from there, I ended up studying pre-med, because I thought I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. I didn't like the idea of white men working on women's bodies. It just really pissed me off. So I was like, how do I change that? I just couldn't be by myself. Then got to chemistry, and I didn't have any chemistry. I got a D and it wasn't for nothing. I'm like, again, perfectionist, so what is that? And I think that's when the imposter syndrome began. And that, again, that's before there was this whole inundated definition of what imposter syndrome was. I just didn't feel like I was as good as my peers. And based on that D, I was not. So I changed my major, and I moved into politics and philosophy of political regimes because I love to see the way that regimes come together and designate how a society works. Because I believe that like I'll have my own country one day, for real. So I wanted to understand the regimes. And in that space, I didn't have too much imposter syndrome. Then I went and got my master's degree. You can't tell, I'm trying to pull up when it came. Then I got my MBA, blah, blah, blah. I'm always so used to being the youngest person, top of my class. I don't really care about